News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag, and the back it says USA.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I am the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. And every week, you know I do my best to uphold values that will never, ever die. This week, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome to our broadcast Senator Rick Santorum. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Grace. Good to be with you.
It's great to be with you. He is one of the Republican presidential candidates, a former senator from Pennsylvania. How are you faring out there in the campaign trail? Are you totally beat or energized?
Oh, I love being out there and engaging and trying to save the country. I mean, we're trying to go out there and paint a vision and trying to rally people to. As my campaign song, which was written by a country music artist, Take Back America. I mean, I think it's really time that we stand up for the values that made our country great and full-throatedly articulate those and try to rally Americans around a very different vision for the future of our country.
Right. Now, before we get rolling with my line of questioning, I want to just lay out a disclosure out there for the audience. My sister, Loredana, has previously worked for the senator, although that does not impinge on this report in any way or my opinion. And, Senator, the reason I reached out to your campaign was I was watching that first Fox News debate, and at the end of it, I thought, wow, Senator Santorum won that. He was leagues above every single other candidate. And to my shock, Senator, the media subsequently was saying that Carly Fiorina won and the spotlight did not shine upon you. Why do you think that is?
One of the things I learned a long time ago is that the media has its own little agenda that they want to pursue, and they have people that you can just see that they're going to get behind and give them a chance. And you know what? We went through that last time. I saw it over and over again in the presidential race. And you know what? We found out that the media ultimately, well, they have an impact, doesn't have the final say. The voters do. And I was able to get out and again stand on principle, stand on conviction, on a clear and positive message for the country. Talk about my record of leadership and accomplishing things. And went to the people of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the early states, and then 10 other states that we won, all without a whole lot of media attention. And so can't worry too much about that. You just got to focus on how you win a race, and you do that by talking to voters and getting them on your team.
Right. Well, for me, it was a bit of a surreal moment because what I saw, and then the subsequent reporting, to me, it was all skewered. What I saw that night, Senator, you won that debate. You were in command of the issues. You have honed your skills since the last time, and you were commanding, you were presidential, you were articulate. What I found impressive was you did lay out what you have achieved. So you have, some of the other senators in the race, like, say, Senator Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or Jr., they don't have a long record of achievement. You're a senator in this race, and you laid out all the legislation that you have put forward in your many years in the Senate. And I thought it was a very impressive record that you're running on.
Well, thank you. I'm someone who went to Washington, D.C., like a lot of the senators who are actually in the race right now. I was young. I was 36 years old when I first went to Washington, and I shook things up. When I went to the Senate, I was 32 when I went to the House, and as part of a gang, not the gang of eight that tried to sell us down the road on some of the immigration issues, but in fact, the gang of seven that actually caused the defeat of the Democratic Speaker of the House, put the Ways and Means Committee chairman in jail for fraudulent activities that we uncovered. I mean, we were we were pretty serious down there and shaking up both political parties. And then you mentioned a whole long record of reforms and accomplishments to limit the size of government and create more freedom and opportunity. And I'm very proud to run on that record, and I think it very much contrasts with some of the younger guys who are running out of the Senate who have a record of pointing the finger and yelling no, but don't have a long record of accomplishment.
Yeah, and I thought you certainly distinguished yourself by pointing that out. And the line that won me completely was when you talked about immigration and you said that America is distinguished because the compassion is in our laws. Yeah, that was brilliant. Right. And your story about your father and grandfather moved me to tears. But I want to ask you this. You said that you have the toughest immigration plan out there. What is your immigration plan?
Well, when I say it's tough, it's actually not tough. It's actually very compassionate for the people in this country who have played by the rules and are seeing a country that is not producing the jobs or the wages and the benefits that really is the promise of America. In part because we have been flooding our labor markets with both legal and illegal immigrants now for the past 25 years, and we have the highest percentage of immigrants living in this country than we have in 105 years. And now that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, but when you see wages have increased up $1, wages for production workers, for people who are wage earners salaries, wages have increased by $1 in 25 years. So, I mean, we're talking about 4 cents a year is what we're seeing as far as increase in the wages, in real wages. That's just, and during that 25-year period, again, we brought in 35 million legal and illegal immigrants, the largest in the history of our country. And what I've said is, I'm not against immigration. When I was in the House in my early days in the Senate, I was actually an advocate for more immigration. I thought it was going to be a good thing. And I think the bottom line is we have to look back and say, has it helped? And I think we have to say, well, it's maybe some, but it certainly has caused a real problem for lower-income workers in America, and that we need to recalibrate. And so what I've suggested is we need to first do a 25% reduction of legal immigration. Mm-hmm. We bring in 1,050,000 a year, the highest level ever in the history of our country. And what I've suggested is let's get back to the highest previous level, which was 750,000, and that was during the late 1800s and early 1900s. So we're going to still be at the second highest rate of immigration, even after my proposal is implemented. And then secondly, we have to do something about illegal immigration. 700,000 people came to this country last year illegally, either by overstaying their visa or by crossing the southern border and coming into this country. That is the highest level now, I think, since the Obama administration started. And it's because we're providing all of this incentive for people to come. And so we need to secure our borders. We need to send people who are overstaying their visas home. And we also need to tell people businesses that are hiring people that they have to verify that their employee is in fact legally able to work here.
Right. Now, when you say secure our borders, do you support building a wall across the border?
I don't think anyone's really suggesting building a wall across the entire border. I don't think that would necessarily be a wise thing to do, a wise expenditure of money. But certainly there is a lot more border walls and border fences that need to be constructed in conjunction with additional personnel at the border, additional sensors, surveillance, drones, etc., to be able to detect movements along the border. And very importantly, we have to start demanding help from the Mexican government. The Mexican government has been complicit in the chaos that is at the border. They've been complicit in allowing people to come through their country from from Central and South America, and then to move into America. They are a big reason why the border is not in control right now. And I think we have to do more. And I've said in my speech today, which I gave at the National Press Club, that we have to, tell Mexico, we want to engage with you. We want to work with you on border stability. But if you're not willing to do that, then we have to start taking measures to make it hurt for Mexico. And one of the things I suggested is not renewing border crossing cards, maybe putting some other types of fees on wires that come back that go from the United States to Mexico. Things like that could really hit Mexico hard they're very much enjoying a lot of money coming from America into Mexico because of illegal immigrants, and we have to make a counterbalance.
Yes, that makes sense. Now, what about, you said that you want to crack down on those who are overstaying their visas and those who are here illegally. What will you do specifically to achieve those goals?
Well, one is E-Verify. I mean, E-Verify is a system that is a very reliable system. Most business people who do use it right now find it to be incredibly reliable and very simple to use. It's a system that identifies whether the worker in your employ is in fact legally here or they're using a false ID. And so anyone that we will require E-Verify for existing employees as well as future employees to weed out people who shouldn't be working in
right.
this
And let's
country.
say one is caught that is illegal. What do you do with that individual?
What I've suggested is that we have to move forward with removals, and that I'm not suggesting that we have people raiding areas for looking, roving bands of ICE workers looking for illegal immigrants. But as we come across illegal immigrants, and whether through the E-Verify system or whether through police work, general police work, they will be put on a path for removal.
Okay, very good. What do you say to the current controversy raging about anchor babies? Do you believe that a child of an illegal immigrant should be an American citizen or not?
I don't want to make a distinction because I think there's some hyperbole going around. I don't think anyone who holds the position that I'm going to articulate is for saying that anyone who is currently a United States citizen who was given citizenship because they were born here in America under the existing interpretation is going to lose their citizenship. So I want to be very clear that any change in the issue of birthright citizenship is going to be prospective, not retroactive. You can't take someone's citizenship that they've already been granted. But you can, going forward, have a system that says that you have to be a legal permanent resident or someone who is an American citizen in order to qualify for birthplace citizenship. That the fact that you don't have illegal immigrants who come into this country. I think under the Constitution, it's very clear the Congress can limit citizenship to only people who have either of those other two statuses, and that includes not giving birthright citizenship to people who are here on a visitor visa. I mean, if you come in to tour America and you have a baby here, your baby shouldn't be given American citizenship simply because you're here on vacation.
Excellent, right. So essentially, you are going to get tough on this crisis that is currently basically transforming America. It is the greatest transformative element of our time.
Yeah, I would say not. I wouldn't say get tough. I would say get compassionate. I would say compassion for the people in this country who are suffering the consequences of a flood of workers that are undermining their ability to be able to provide for their families. I mean, people talk about family breakup. How about families that are breaking up because of economic stress and strife caused by lower wages and lack of opportunity for employment? We tend to look at it from the perspective of people and seeking compassion for people who have put themselves in this situation deliberately by breaking the law, and that we're supposed to feel compassion for them, which of course we are. I mean, we're supposed to feel compassion for everybody, but we forget about all the millions of Americans who are suffering as a result of that, and that's why I say I don't see this as getting tough at all. I see this as really looking out for what every American public policy decision should be about, and that is what is in the best interest of America.
Indeed. Now, Senator, you are obviously an individual who has stood very firm for your Christian convictions. You appeal to values voters. I am a value voter. I wear my Christianity on my sleeve, and I vote accordingly. It seems, though, that in this election, those values are being totally ignored. There's a lot of talk about the economy, a lot of talk about immigration, but where is the voice? Who represents right now? Who is the best candidate for those who care about advancing the Christian cause in this country? Especially Christians are constantly being persecuted. So what do you say to all that?
I would say that we need people who are going to promote the values that made our country great and not be afraid to articulate the importance and the integral nature of the dignity of all human life and what that means to a society that values human life and how it creates a much safer, much more wholesome, a more virtuous and prosperous society, one that values the marriage of a man and a woman to form families that become the foundation of which not just our society is built, but our economy is built. Those are things that are truths that we know are good, that we know are true, that we know are morally right, and we should not back away from them because there's a temporary period of time in America where people have found it to be too much of a restriction on their own personal freedom to live by those values and virtues.
Indeed. And what is your response to the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage?
I think it was an unconstitutional decision, and as such is one that the other branches of government have a responsibility to contest. And as president, I would do my best to move the American public in a direction to help me contest that decision. And I think by the time I'm president in January of 2017, I think we'll see a lot of evidence that this decision is doing real harm to religious liberty in America, to the family in America, and to children and their ability to be able to live to their potential.
Do you think we live in an age of Christian persecution?
Well, it certainly is true in many other areas around the world. There's no question that Christians are being persecuted in I don't know about record numbers, but certainly greatly in the Middle East, in particular, Africa and other places in Asia. And even here, you're beginning to see it. You're seeing evidence that Christianity are now being told, Christians are now being told, Hillary Clinton is an example, that you just have to change your beliefs to conform to what the government believes is the right thing to do. That should be a warning flare to everybody, whether you're a believer or not. When the government can tell you have to conform to what the government is telling you to believe, we have lost the most fundamental of rights.
Very well said, Senator. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you. That was Senator Rick Santorum, Republican presidential candidate. We look forward to having you on our broadcast again someday, sir.
Thank you. And if you want to help, please go to ricksantorum.com and sign up to help us out. If you can make a contribution, I always say if you're willing to make a contribution, I'm willing to accept. So please help us out.
Well, good luck. So that's ricksantorum.com. Go to ricksantorum.com. He has a great website. It outlines all of the key issues that he holds dear. Check it out, ricksantorum.com. Thank you and good luck, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. That was our interview with Senator Rick Santorum, presidential hopeful, and an individual who the mainstream media, in my view, totally blackballed after that first debate. I thought he won it hands down. Great record and certainly very appealing to values voters like Dr. Grace.
Tonight, fire beneath my feet is burning bright. The way that I've been holding on so tight, with nothing in between.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back to American Heartland. This is Dr. Grace, editor of politics and culture at worldtribune.com. Speaking of worldtribune.com, there's a story there that I want every single one of you to check out. It is called Why No Outrage Over Planned Parenthood Videos. Meet its big media interlocking directorate. It is by Joe Schaefer. Check out this piece. It is a bombshell report. As many of you have already heard, Planned Parenthood has been in the national spotlight because of a few videos that have exposed the shocking practices in that organization. We know that they are a leading abortion provider, but what has been absolutely unbelievable is the recent discovery that so many of the aborted fetus of these aborted fetuses are actually killed in a manner that preserves their organs, and these organs are harvested and then sold. It is a story that has caused such outrage that many leading Republican candidates are rightly calling for all federal funding of Planned Parenthood to come to an immediate halt. I second that, and also I think we need a criminal investigation, and every single individual who was involved in that should be prosecuted and put in jail. This is appalling. It's disgusting. It has no place in a humane civilization. It certainly has no place in a society like the United States of America, which prides itself on being one of the most compassionate countries in the world. And what we are doing is not only killing 60 million babies a year, but now torturing them so we can pick apart the body parts that work. This is right out of a horror movie. I never thought I would live to see the day that this would go on in the United States of America, how far we have fallen. And I think that drumbeat of outrage should continue to come relentlessly until we dismantle Planned Parenthood root and branch. And I don't care what someone like Donald Trump says, that, let's keep Planned Parenthood afoot because they do a lot of good for women. It's a good clinic, except for the practice of abortion. Look, you can't separate the practice of abortion from the rest of Planned Parenthood. From its very founding, it had a mission, and part of that mission was to allow women to kill their unborn babies. It's inextricable. Planned Parenthood and abortions go together. There's no salvaging that rotten organization. And if we truly care about women's health, we can certainly find other worthy organizations that can use the federal funding that is now going to Planned Parenthood. So I would like to see Planned Parenthood starved of its funds. You know what? Let's do to it what it's doing to those babies. Let's rip it apart. Let's destroy it. Let's knock it out of existence with the same brutality that they're showing those unborn babies. But one reason that this story here that I'm talking to you about in worldtribune.com is so good is it takes this story one step further. The question is asked, why is there no outrage over the Planned Parenthood videos in the rest of the mainstream media? So you're hearing the outrage from talk radio and from a few conservative outlets. But by and large, much of the mainstream media is not following through on this story. And this is an expose. Joe Schaefer shows in intricate detail how so many of the leading organs of opinion, the leading organs of reporting of our time, like the Gannett organization, which owns USA Today, like Jeff Bezos, which owns the Washington Post, and so on and so forth. So many of the leading reporting agencies of our time are actually donors to Planned Parenthood. So there's a direct link between the media's financial support of Planned Parenthood and their unwillingness to hold this organization to task. So many times we have scratched our heads when we analyze a story and we say, why is the mainstream media not following up on it? And a report like this shows you the links, the financial links, the corrupt financial links between the media and a heinous organization like this. I think we need to drum up this story as much as we can, not only highlighting how perverse Planned Parenthood is, how perverse the entire abortion industry is, but also how perverse its donors are and the influence that they wield within the highest echelons of our media class. So big hat tip to Joe Schaefer for this expose. And speaking of another really intriguing expose this week, is the story about AshleyMadison.com. As many of you know, this is a website that encourages married couples to have an affair. So if you have cheating on your mind, you can log on to AshleyMadison.com and you can find another married person with whom to have sexual relations. That is the mission of AshleyMadison.com. And in fact, they have 40 million subscribers worldwide. Well, this week, hackers basically grabbed so much of the information of the clients of this site and made this information public. They also released a rationale for doing what they did. And in that rationale, these hackers said that AshleyMadison.com was in some ways a fraudulent organization because they had many, many more men on the site than they did women. And they were trying to get AshleyMadison.com to at least abide by the very promises of that website. But more than that, these hackers, they wanted to shame these adulterers. They wanted to shame them into doing the right thing. Now, that's a bit perverse because I think hacking into a website and taking personal information and then making that personal information public, I don't think that that is a right thing. So it's kind of ironic that they wanted to shame these individuals, but at the same time, two wrongs don't make a right. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying. I do not condone what these hackers did. But there's a lesson to be learned here. And that lesson is that oftentimes wrongdoing will be exposed. How idiotic of those individuals who signed up for that website. Nowadays, we have so many reports of hacking. I mean, at the highest levels of our government. The Secretary of State, John Kerry, said that his emails are probably hacked into by foreign governments. We had recent reports that it is possible for some very skilled hackers to hack into the systems that airlines use. So, put two and two together, and why would you think that your information is safe on a site like AshleyMadison.com? And there's kind of like a sweet karma at work. These folks thought they were going to be given privacy. They could do their cheating and their lying in the dark. And now it has backfired so badly that their reputations are destroyed because it's not only a spouse of these cheaters that knows what has happened, but the whole world knows it. In fact, you have members within government agencies that have been exposed. Members within the British political class have been exposed. This scandal is huge, and it shows you how many people are willing to deceive that person that they should hold most dear, their spouse. How many people are willing to transgress that most sacred vow, their marital vow. It is a stunning expose, but I think, too, there's a real lesson here. The things that you think you're doing in the dark, they're not really in the dark. Sooner or later, they come out into the light. There's almost like a natural moral law at work, where the dark is always, inevitably, ultimately exposed. And one of the thoughts that ran through my mind was, what if the same hacking is done of all those folks who are subscribers to porn websites? And there are so many porn websites out there, some of them which are truly deviant websites, doing a lot of sick, people are doing a lot of sick things to one another, and you have subscribers to these sites. What if hackers expose those individuals? I think it's a real warning to everybody out there. If you think you're going to get away with sinful deeds, you know what? Ultimately, you're going to get caught. And that humiliation is going to be huge. So think twice before you stab somebody in the back. You might be surprised. That knife might be going right into your own back.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Another, but I probably should not. I got somebody at home.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I am the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. We have a guest today. It is Jennifer Burke. She is the co-founder of Politistic.com and its editor-in-chief. Welcome, Miss Burke.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, you are an advocate for individual freedom, and you are outraged that a citizen journalist by the name of James O'Keefe is being harassed by the Obama administration. Can you tell us what's going on?
Yes, for those of your listeners who do not know, James O'Keefe has actually been the reason for a lot of powerful investigative videos. He's the reason that Acorn basically dismantled. They were at the heart of a lot of voter fraud. He exposed Planned Parenthood, were aiding and abetting and sex trades and counseling people on how to get underaged girls abortions.
Yeah, for those of you might remember, he posed as a pimp in that video. It went viral. Yeah. It was the talk of the town for quite a while. Go on, continue.
Exactly, and it put him on the map. And most recently, last summer, when we were having a crazy influx of illegals flooding the border, a lot of people argued that it's not just illegals we have to worry about, it was terrorists. So one of the things that James O'Keefe did was he dressed up as Osama bin Laden, and he crossed the southern border to show just how easy it was to cross it with no problem. And ever since he did that, he's been stopped by U.S. Customs at airports 6 times, I believe it is now. After the 4th time, he thought this is ridiculous, and when he was coming back into the country through Canada, he was stopped by U.S. Customs, and he recorded it. And it's really, really disturbing. He is being targeted because of this investigative journalism that is making the government look bad. That's showing just how unsafe the Obama administration is making this country.
Okay, now let me play devil's advocate for a second. So when he is stopped, what happens exactly? He's just asked a series of questions, and then he's allowed to enter the country, correct?
Well, it's not just so simple as a series of questions. When he was stopped in Canada, he was held for over an hour, and they even asked him things like, "So, what? Did you dress up as somebody and cross the border?" And they said, we're afraid you might be trying to smuggle something to show just how easy it is, and you'll make us look bad if we allow you to go through. And then 11 days later, when he was stopped again in Seattle, he actually saw a picture of the computer screen that basically said, and I don't have my computer in front of me, but it accused him of basically making things up to try to make the government look bad. Had his picture, it had his name. And so, he's being targeted just because of his investigative journalism.
Indeed. Now, what would you say to somebody who says, well, look, if he's done this in the past, they fear that he's going to do it again. He's going to embarrass them again. So they're caught now between a rock and a hard place. Every time this guy crosses the border, they're going to have to do that just to safeguard their own jobs. It's not harassment. It's just he's brought the spotlight on himself, and now they have to do it in order to protect their reputations. How do you answer that question?
You know what? If this was the first instance of the Obama administration targeting and harassing reporters, that would be one thing, and perhaps you can make that argument. But remember, just a few years ago, they tried to paint Fox News' James Rosen as a co-conspirator against the government for simply doing his job as a reporter. They not only tapped his phone, they tapped his parents' phones or tracked his parents' communication, and they also were tracking things inappropriately with AP reporters. So it's disturbing the lengths that the Obama administration is going to basically stifle freedom of speech. When we've seen him call out media outlets that he does not like, he tried to get Fox News kicked out of the White House press pool because he doesn't like the fact that they won't fall in line with his agenda, and that they'll actually criticize him and point out things that they think is not correct. So it's not simply, in my opinion, just doing their job. It is targeting him because they don't like what he's doing, and they've done it before. I mean, if a Republican president were doing the types of things that Obama is doing to squash free speech, I think that the liberal media would be singing a different tune.
Indeed. And what he did, what O'Keefe did when he crossed the border, disguised as Osama bin Laden, he exposed just how unsafe the border is,
Exactly.
how unsafe we are right now, essentially,
Right.
because our border is wide open. Even someone who looks like a sworn enemy, a known enemy, in fact, enemy number one of the United States, could cross over with impunity. And indeed, that is really embarrassing to the Obama administration. So you see this as pure retaliation for exposing the danger that this president puts American citizens in.
Exactly. And remember, even while we had illegals streaming across the border, thousands by the day, and the Obama administration were putting them in planes and dropping them off in various cities across the country, Obama had the audacity to claim that our border has never been more secure. Well, James O'Keefe proved that that's not true. And the unfortunate reality is our Border Patrol agents have gone from patrolling the border and trying to make sure, bad people don't get in, make sure that it's not crossed illegally, make sure that our nation is secure, to basically just being babysitters. I mean, at that time last summer, they were basically making sure that people crossed the border safely, that no one got hurt, and were relegated to just babysitting these illegals that were being housed in facilities. So James O'Keefe made them look bad. I mean, you can look at lots of variety of things with this administration. Look at the TSA, how many trials that they failed to show that these safeguards that are supposedly the government's claiming have put in place to secure this country really aren't doing a thing.
Indeed. So what is your understanding of why this is happening? Why is the administration so lax?
When last summer, I remember one of Obama's biggest allies, Luis Gutierrez from Chicago, went to the border of Texas and spoke in Spanish, and basically it was either Texas or California. No, it was Texas, and said that the land actually belonged to Mexico. This was stolen land that we were standing on, and that's the argument that some Democrats are making. I believe that they know that the larger percentage of illegals that come across that border are going to vote Democrat, and they want that voter base. They've abandoned the black. They used and abused the black vote for decades, and now they're done with them, and they're moving on to the next group. Illegal immigration will have a horrible effect on our country in many ways, but especially with the unemployment levels of the black community, which already has record unemployment under Barack Obama. And it's the voter base they want, and I've never understood in all of my adult life why we didn't have a national language. And the Democrats have worked so hard for so many decades to strip this country of any national identity, and this is just part of that.
Right. Very well said. Now, I founded an institute in 2005 called the Edmund Burke Institute for American Renewal. And the basis of that institute was to encourage African Americans and Hispanics and young people and women, encourage them to vote according to conservative values that many of them hold. And when you said earlier that African Americans have been basically used and abused by the Democratic Party, that's what I used to tell my students. I used to teach at Howard University, and I used to tell them, right now, you're not using your vote strategically because the Democrats believe that they have your vote locked up, and therefore they can ignore all your issues and concerns. And the Republicans, on the other hand, feel we're never going to get their vote, and therefore they ignore you too. And so essentially, the African American communities might say, they languish precisely because they're not using their vote strategically. So how did you come to your conservative values? How did you become a conservative?
I didn't really realize. I was kind of one of those apolitical people for a long time, and it was probably in my early 30s that I finally started waking up. And it was, the Democrats have worked slowly but surely. But starting in the mid 2000s, they just ramped it up. And it was really, for me, the big awakening was Barack Obama. And a lot of people listened to what he said, and they didn't really hear what he was saying. But I heard what he was saying when he talked about fundamental transformation of this country. And my first thought was, how do you want to fundamentally transform something that you supposedly claim to love? Something, how is the Constitution a flawed document, and it's something that you're going to raise your hand and put your other hand on the Bible and claim to defend and support it. And so Obama woke me up, because I realized, I looked at what he believed in, how he voted, what his record was, what he did even as a civilian, as a community organizer, rabble-rouser, and that's what really got me involved. But when I would speak to my husband, Matthew, about, I was a teacher for 12 years, about how I ran my classroom, and he told me, he said, I knew you were a conservative. He just never said anything to me based upon how you told me you ran your classroom, because I didn't take any excuses. It didn't matter to me what color a kid was. It didn't matter what their family history was. It didn't matter what their home life was. I had the exact same high expectations for everybody, which is what liberals don't have. Mm-hmm. They have that soft bigotry of low expectations for blacks. And it's even now they're wanting to apply that to the criminal system and having some crime laws changed because more blacks commit them, and they say it's racist. Are you saying they can't help themselves? Mm-hmm. I think the message that the Democrats send to the black community is a horrible one, and I wish more people would open their eyes. They have successfully taken their racist history and led blacks to believe that it was actually the Republicans that supported slavery, that blocked the civil rights movement, and that had the Jim Crow laws. And it's a shame. I wish more people within the black community would understand fully who the Democrats truly are.
Now, you are a woman after my own heart, because as a professor, I was just as tough as I was just as hard on my students as you seem to be. And I had high expectations for them. And you know what? Most young people love it when you have high expectations for them, because they want to be challenged. They want to be challenged.
Yes, I totally agree.
Now, tell me, when you speak to folks about your anti-Obama views, do you get a lot of hostility, or do you get a good reception?
Well, like most black conservatives, it's interesting to me. Black conservatives are typically accused of being self-loathing, hating their own race, being Uncle Toms, all kind of things. But then you have people who have faked being black, like Rachel Dolezal and most recently Sean King, and then you have these very same black people that attack black conservatives like me, saying, who are we to judge them? If they feel they're black, they're black. What a double standard that is. White liberals, they don't understand it. I do have a few friends. I remember I was featured in a Ebony magazine one year. They did a profile of some black conservative women, and one of my friends that I've known since she was in kindergarten wrote to me and said, who do I see when I open up my recent issue of Ebony magazine? My one black conservative friend. Sad to say that I'm her only black conservative friend. But not all of them are open-minded like that. It's usually, they usually go on the attack. It's interesting. Liberals claim that conservatives are closed-minded and racist, but it's really the liberals that are the ones that are closed-minded and racist with their assumption that I should look in the mirror and determine that I'm a Democrat because my skin is darker.
Exactly. And also, as though the color of your skin should determine almost every single thought in your head. It should determine your political allegiance. But no, guess what? Newsflash, Jennifer Burke has a soul and a mind and a brain, and she's a unique person that doesn't fall into any one category. And they're the ones that are trying, they always talk about they're the party of diversity, but they're the ones that want to put people in very narrow, rigid boxes.
Right. If you always look at the claims of the party of diversity, all you have to do is look at the Republican GOP, the Republican presidential candidates versus the Democrat presidential candidates, and you tell me which one is the party of real diversity.
Yeah, in terms of their belief system, yes, indeed. You are so right. There's a lot more diversity on the Republican stage at the last presidential debate. And now, in fact, the Democrats are preventing debate, right? You have Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, saying, we want more debates. And the Democrats, the so-called party of diversity and tolerance and open-mindedness, they don't want too many debates. No, let's just crown Hillary as quickly as we can.
Exactly.
That's obviously backfiring. Well, let me ask you one last question. What is Politistic and what brought about its foundation?
Well, Politistic, it's a news and an opinion website, conservative-based, and we make no bones about it. We say from the get-go we are biased to anyone and anything that supports the Constitution, the document upon which this country is supposed to be run. And I founded this along with my husband, Matthew Burke, and a friend of ours, Chris Hall, because we just felt there needed to be a different, hard-hitting voice out there, something that to counter the liberal narrative and the liberal spin. And there are always stories out there that are kind of buried under the radar a little bit that the media does not want you to know about. And we try to bring those stories to the forefront. And so we started the site in April of this year, and we've been very, very pleased with our growth since then. My husband and I actually attended the first Tea Party rally in Seattle, and have been very involved with the movement ever since then. So it's a blessing to be able to do this.
Awesome. Well done. And thank you for being with us today. That is Jennifer Burke, the co-founder of Politistic and the editor-in-chief. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Shut up, just shut up, shut up, 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 shut up.
Well, it's that moment in our broadcast, and we have a doozy this time. The worst press conference I have ever seen in my entire life. The worst response to a question by a reporter I have ever heard in my entire life. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Hillary Clinton. Now we know why she's been avoiding the media. Because every time she opens her mouth, what comes out is pure garbage. And it's embarrassing. It's cringeworthy. She was pressed by Fox News reporter Ed Henry about that infamous private email account and private server. Now that server is in the hands of the FBI. And the FBI tells us that the server was wiped clean. In addition, they are telling us that a lot of the material can be recovered. In the meantime, Hillary Clinton is in the hot seat. Listen to this.
Release it, we'd be having the same arguments.
The FBI believes that you tried to wipe the entire server. Did you try to wipe the entire, so that there be no email, no personal, no official?
Well, my personal emails are my personal business, right? So we went through a painstaking process and turned over 55,000 pages of anything we thought could be work-related. Under the law, that decision is made by the official. I was the official. I made those decisions. And as I just said, over 1,200 of the emails have already been deemed not work-related. Now, all I can tell you is, in retrospect, if I'd used a government account and I had said, you know, let's release everything. Let's let everybody in America see what I did for 4 years. We would have the same arguments. So that's all I could say. I'm not, you know, I have no idea. That's why we turned it over.
You were the official in charge. Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something? Well, no. I don't know how it works digitally at all. I do not have any. Ed, I know you want to make a point, and I can just repeat what I have said. In order to be as cooperative as possible, we have turned over the server. They can do whatever they want to with the server to figure out what's there or what's not there. That's for the people investigating it to try to figure out. But we turned over everything that was work related, every single thing. Personal stuff, we did not. I had no obligation to do so and did not.
It was unbelievable. She's being asked a simple question. Did you wipe that server clean? And I literally cringed when I saw her say, you mean wipe it with a cloth? I mean, who advised her to say something so ridiculous, so preposterous, something that makes her look guilty? Everybody knows what the term wipe the server clean means. And then he follows up by saying, did you have that server wiped clean professionally? And she says, I have no knowledge of that. And he rightfully follows up by saying, well, wait a minute. You said a minute ago you are the official in charge. You made the decisions as to what is personal and what is professional. So you were the official in charge. You were the official when it came to determining which of those personal emails were deleted. And now suddenly you have no knowledge and you can't speak intelligently about who wiped that server clean. And if you didn't do it, then who did? If you didn't do it, aren't you worried that somebody else did it? Doesn't that possibly jeopardize national security? I mean, that's the next question I would have said. I would have said, excuse me, Madam Hillary. If you, the official in charge, have no knowledge about what happened regarding the server being wiped clean of that data, a lot of that data being classified information, including top secret information. So if you have no knowledge of that, somebody wiped it clean. And if it wasn't you, the official in charge, who was it? So either you have here a situation, I mean, right now, this woman's campaign is going up in smoke right before our eyes because either you have a blatant liar and a criminal, which I've been saying she is right from the start, or the most incompetent person, the most incompetent Secretary of State in the history of this great nation. This press conference will seal her doom. This woman, her political campaign is finished. It is in tethers. It is destroyed by her own actions and certainly by her own words. Can you imagine what a Republican candidate can do with this? Just loop that over and over again. You mean wipe clean as with a cloth? I have spoken to die-hard Democrats who usually give everything to the Democrats. Any possible shadow of the doubt, they will rule in favor of the Democrats. And they are saying she clearly comes across as having a very big secret to hide. She comes across as a crook. And that is plain for everybody to see. Her poll numbers continue to drop, sink even in swing states like Florida and Ohio and Colorado, and the list goes on. And that socialist continues to rise. With press conferences like this, it's no wonder Hillary Clinton just shut up.
Let's get it now.
Well, Dr. Grace knows how to have a good time. I told you that I'm back to one of my hobbies, which is attending concerts. And recently I had the pleasure to go visit Toby Keith's concert. I was there in the crowd. Basically, from the moment he got on stage to the moment he left, everybody was standing. It was song after song after song. He had the crowd on their feet from the get-go. I've seen many country music concerts as well as other genres, but I want to just comment on this. Toby Keith's concert was the most patriotic concert I have ever attended. I really want to congratulate him on his sense of the value of the service given to this country, and not just by our armed forces. He saluted them many times, but he also took the time to salute policemen who put their lives on the line for our safety, firefighters who put their lives on the line for others, and our military. You know, his own father, Toby Keith, was a service member, and you can tell when he sings his songs, especially those that touch upon patriotic themes, those words come right from his soul. He means it. He's authentic. And I want to tell you this. As it turned out, I was sitting in a row, and there was a woman behind me, an older woman with her husband. And she tapped on my shoulder and she said, "Hey, is this your first Toby Keith concert?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Mine too. We're so excited." And I could tell by what her husband was wearing that he was a service member. And a couple of times I couldn't help it, but I turned around to see the expression on his face. And he, at some point in the concert, he decided to just sit down. He had his head in his hands and he was shaking it. He was despondent. Obviously, some of the songs took him back to a war zone. So when we left, when the concert was over, she was telling me the whole time that she was waiting for American Soldier to be sung, and he sang it in the encore, waving the American flag. So as we walked out, I turned to her and I said, "Well, I gather your husband's a service member." And she said, "Yes." So I shook out my hand and I said, "Sir, I want to thank you for your service." I said, "Where did you serve?" And he was shaking his head, and he was so distraught he couldn't answer my question. So I turned to her and I said, "Well, thank you for your service." She said, "My husband served and my son is currently serving." I said, "Thank you 2 and 3 and 4 and 100 times. This is a mother and a wife who has made that sacrifice for this country." And as euphoric as I was with the great pleasure of having been at this wonderful Toby Keith concert, I still walked away with the pain in my heart that this service member, as those patriotic songs were rolling, all he could think about was the ones that were left behind and the ones with the wounds that never ever go away. Well, thank you, Toby Keith, for your patriotism, and thanks to all our service members. Let's embrace them in their ongoing pain. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that will never, ever die.
I was born by God's dear grace.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.